Good evening, sweetheart. It's Maggie. Come sit with me. Let's make this night a gentler one. It's raining tonight. Not the kind of rain that rushes in or makes a point of itself. Just the steady Seattle kind. The kind that doesn't knock. It simply arrives and assumes you'll remember it. I noticed it before I even looked outside. The air felt different, a little heavier, a little slower. I sat down right here, where I always do, and for a moment, I didn't think of anything at all. That's usually how it starts. Not with a memory, not with a feeling, but with the weather changing its tone. Seattle rain has a way of doing that. It doesn't ask you how you're feeling. It just keeps going, long enough for you to notice what you've been carrying. I reached for my tea then, the same cup I tend to choose on evenings like this. It's not my favorite tea, just the one that feels right when the sky looks like it's thinking. I wrapped my hands around the cup and let the warmth settle in, not to comfort myself, just to arrive. Lily shifted at my feet when I moved. That small, familiar adjustment that tells me she's awake enough to notice, but relaxed enough not to worry. She's very good at that. The rain kept going, not louder, not softer, just present. And that's when I felt it. Not sadness, not exactly, just a gentle pull, like when a door you haven't opened in a while reminds you it's still there. I didn't think of him right away. That part came later. First, there was only the sense of, again. You learn something about memory as you grow older. It doesn't always come back because something is unfinished. Sometimes it comes back because it's finally quiet enough to be heard. I watch the rain trace its way down the window. Thin lines, overlapping, separating, meeting again. It made me think of how time works, how moments don't disappear, they just wait. I took a small sip of tea, not because I needed it, but because the motion felt familiar. That was when the thought landed. Not sharply, not dramatically, just clearly. I miss him. The words didn't hurt. They didn't surprise me either. They felt accurate. You see, Missing someone at this age doesn't feel the way it used to. It's quieter now. It doesn't interrupt your breathing. It doesn't pull you backward. It simply sits beside you, like an old coat you still recognize the weight of. The rain didn't make me miss him. It just reminded me that the feeling still knows where I live. I didn't follow the thought. I didn't open it up or ask it questions. I let it be what it was, a presence, not a problem. There's a kind of peace in realizing that some memories don't need your attention. They just want acknowledgement. Outside, the rain kept its rhythm. Inside, the room stayed warm. Nothing was missing. Nothing needed fixing. And yet, something had gently returned. So if you're listening tonight, and the weather feels like it's touching something inside you too, not painfully, just honestly, you're not doing anything wrong. Sometimes the rain arrives before the memory does, and sometimes that's exactly how it's meant to be. The rain didn't change after that. It didn't respond to the thought. It didn't soften or grow heavier. It simply kept falling, as if it had its own evening to finish. That's one thing I've always noticed about Seattle rain. It doesn't rush you. It stays long enough for your thoughts to stop pretending they're busy. When I first moved here years ago, I thought the rain would feel lonely. Gray days, low skies, too much quiet. But that isn't what it does. It doesn't isolate. It gathers. It gathers sound into itself. Cars passing softer, footsteps slowing, even voices learning to speak a little more gently. I leaned back in my chair and listened, not to anything specific, just to the way the rain filled the space without demanding it. There's something kind about weather that doesn't ask how you're holding up. It just stays. I noticed my shoulders relax then, not because I told them to, but because the room had stopped asking anything of me. I took another sip of tea. The cup was warm enough now that I didn't need to hold it tightly, and rested easily in my hands, the way things do when you stop gripping them out of habit. The rain has a way of doing that too. It loosens your grip on the parts of the day you've been carrying unnecessarily. I've learned something over the years. Certain weather doesn't bring memories with it. It makes room for them. Sunny days ask you to move forward. windy days ask you to brace yourself. But rain invites you to sit. And when you sit long enough, old doors remember how to open. Not all at once, just enough. That's why the memory didn't feel sudden. It felt expected, like something that had been waiting patiently for the room to grow quiet enough. I glanced toward the window again. The rain traced its slow paths downward, never in a straight line, never in a hurry. It reminded me of how remembering works. We don't go directly to the moment. We circle it. We approach from the side. I didn't think of his face yet. That comes later. What arrived first was the season of him, the sound of rain against coats, the smell of damp wool, the way evenings used to stretch longer when neither of us felt the need to fill them. Lily shifted slightly at my feet, then settled again. She knows this part. She always does. I rested my hand on the arm of the chair and let the rain continue without comment. There was no ache in it, no pull toward the past, just a recognition. Missing someone doesn't always announce itself with pain. Sometimes it arrives as familiarity, as a quiet understanding that something meaningful once occupied this same space. I think that's why rain and memory get along so well. Neither one insists on being solved. They just move through you until you remember how to let them. The evening felt full now, not crowded, just settled. And the rain, still steady, still patient, had done its part. It had opened the door, gently, without pushing me through. In a moment, the memory would begin to take a clearer shape. Not tonight's whole story, just enough to recognize him again. And when it does, I'll tell you. The memory didn't come with his name. It rarely does anymore. Names belong to introductions. This wasn't that. This was recognition. I stayed where I was, hands resting easily now, the cup cooling beside me. There was no urgency to pick it back up. The warmth had already done its work. It's strange, the way remembering changes. When you're younger, memory rushes in like it's afraid of being late. Now, it walks. And when it finally reached me tonight, it wasn't his voice I heard. It was the sound of rain against fabric, coats hanging by the door, water dripping patiently onto the mat. I could almost see it, not clearly, just enough. He used to pause there, right inside the door, long enough to shake the rain from his shoulders. Not dramatically, just a small, practiced motion, as if he knew the house was listening. That's what came back first. Not his face, not his words, his consideration. There are some people you don't remember by how they spoke. You remember them by how carefully they entered a room. He always did, even on wet evenings like this. I smiled then, without meaning to. Not because the memory was sweet, but because it was accurate. Accuracy matters now. It keeps memory from turning into fantasy. I reached for my tea again, more out of habit than need. The cup felt cooler this time, not empty, just ready to be set aside. That felt right too. He never rushed things that were meant to settle. Coats, conversations, even silence. I think that's why the rain brought him back tonight. Not because rain was our thing, but because rain moves the way he did. Unassuming, patient, willing to wait. Lily lifted her head for a moment, then rested it back down. She's heard this rhythm before. I didn't feel a hole open inside me. That's important. What I felt instead was a shape becoming clear. Memory at this age isn't sharp. It's dimensional. It doesn't stab. It surrounds. I let the image rest there. Him standing quietly by the door, rain easing from his coat, the house receiving him. I didn't step into the scene. I didn't follow him further. I stayed here. That's another thing time teaches you. You don't have to relive a moment to honor it. Sometimes acknowledging it is enough. The rain continued its steady conversation outside. Inside, the room felt unchanged. And yet, something had been placed back exactly where it belonged. I think that's the difference now. Missing him doesn't pull me backward. It settles beside me, quietly, respectfully. And as the evening continued, I realized something else was forming. Not pain, not longing, but an understanding, one I hadn't expected. And that is what I'll tell you next. I stayed still for a long moment after that, not frozen, just settled. The rain hadn't changed its rhythm. The room hadn't shifted. But something inside me had found its footing. There's a quiet difference between missing and being pulled. Tonight, I noticed it clearly. When I was younger, remembering him felt like stepping onto a moving train. You didn't decide where it went. You just held on. But this evening, I was standing on the platform, watching. That's how I knew something had changed. Not in the memory, in me. I leaned back slightly, letting the chair do what it's always done. Hold. I don't thank it enough for that. The rain tapped gently against the glass, not asking to be let in, just reminding the house it was there. I thought about all the times I used to resist nights like this, evenings when the weather felt too familiar, too loaded. I'd distract myself then, turn on more lights, fill the room with sound, do something, anything, to keep memory from settling. Tonight, I didn't do that, and that felt new. It wasn't bravery, it was readiness. There's a stage of grief, and I say this gently, with no drama, where you realize you're no longer afraid of what remembering might cost you, because you already paid long ago. No, remembering doesn't take, it returns. I reached for my tea again, not to drink, just to feel the cup. It was almost empty now, but still warm. That felt like a metaphor I didn't need to explain. Some things don't. I thought about how often we confuse healing with forgetting, as if the goal were to erase. It never was. Healing is learning how to hold without tightening your grip. The rain outside didn't wash him away tonight. It didn't resurrect him either. It simply reminded me that memory can exist without demanding anything. That realization didn't arrive loudly. It arrived like the moment you notice your shoulders have lowered without you telling them to. Lily shifted closer, her weight warm and familiar. She always does that when my breathing changes. Animals sense release before we name it. I rested my hand gently on her back, not for comfort, for acknowledgement. This house has held many versions of me. The woman who waited, the woman who grieved, the woman who survived the quiet after, and now the woman who can sit with rain and let memory stand beside her without flinching. That feels important, not dramatic, but foundational. Because once you realize memory no longer controls the room, You notice what else is present: the lamp's steady glow, the chair's patience, the dog's breath, the rain's consistency. Life didn't pause because someone left. It learned a different rhythm. And tonight, for the first time in a long while, I could hear it clearly, not louder than the past, just more grounded than before. There's something else the rain revealed to me tonight, something quieter, something I hadn't named yet, not about him, about me. And that is what I'll tell you next. There was a moment tonight, just one quiet moment, when I realized the memory hadn't come to take me backward. It had come to show me where I was standing now. That surprised me, because for years, when he appeared in my thoughts, I only saw what was missing, what had been taken, what never came back. But tonight, I noticed something else. Me, still here, still breathing in rhythm with the rain, still holding a warm cup, still knowing when to sit and when not to run. The tea had gone weak. I didn't mind. I used to. There was a time when I needed things to be just right, strong enough, warm enough, distracting enough. That version of me was doing her best. I don't judge her anymore. I set the cup down and rested my palms on my knees. No fidgeting, no fixing, just presence. That's when it occurred to me, the weather didn't make me miss him again. It simply gave me the quiet to notice how far I've come with the missing. I used to think missing someone meant being incomplete, like a sentence cut off mid-thought. But missing, I've learned, can also mean carrying, not as weight, as evidence. Evidence that love happened here, that it left a shape, and that shape didn't destroy me. I leaned forward slightly, listening to the rain. It sounded steadier now, less insistent, almost companionable. Seattle rain has always had that quality. It doesn't demand attention. It waits. And in that waiting, it teaches you something. That life continues, not loudly, not neatly, but faithfully. I thought about the woman I was the year after he died, how the rain felt like an accusation then, how every gray sky felt personal. She wouldn't recognize me tonight, not because I'm stronger, but because I'm softer. Softness was once something I feared losing. Now I understand it's something I earned. Lily moved again, pressing closer, her warmth grounded, unquestioning. I smiled without trying to. That happens now. Smiles arrive. They don't need permission. I used to apologize for moments like that, as if joy were a betrayal, as if calm meant forgetting. It doesn't. It means integrating. Tonight, I realized something quietly powerful. The rain didn't reopen a wound. It traced the scar, and the scar didn't ache. It simply existed. Scars are honest. They don't pretend nothing happened. They also don't keep bleeding. I ran my thumb along the edge of the cup. The ceramic was chipped there, a small imperfection, unimportant, except it wasn't. That chip told me the cup had survived being dropped, that it was still useful, still trusted. I think that's what this memory was doing tonight. Not breaking me open, just reminding me I didn't shatter. Outside, the rain softened again. Inside, my breath matched it. There's a particular peace that comes when you stop asking memory to behave, when you let it speak and then let it rest. I didn't need to talk back. I didn't need answers. I only needed to stay. And I did. That's not a small thing. And it leads me to one last truth I want to share with you tonight. Not about him, not about the rain, but about what comes next. There comes a point in the evening when the night stops asking questions. Tonight reached that point quietly. The rain had thinned into something gentler now, not leaving, just easing its grip. I didn't feel the need to hold on to the memory anymore, not because it wasn't important, but because it had finished speaking. I've learned something over the years. Memory is like a guest. If you let it stay too long, it starts rearranging the furniture. Tonight, I stood up slowly and did something small but deliberate. I carried the memory to the edge of the room, not to push it away, just to give it a place to sit. There's dignity in that, allowing remembrance without letting it run the evening. I poured a little more hot water into my cup, not to make the tea stronger, but to make it warm again. That felt symbolic too. Some things don't need intensity. They need kindness. I took one final sip, slow, unrushed. The warmth traveled downward, and I followed it with my attention, back into my body, back into the chair, back into now. The rain outside continued its quiet agreement with the night. It wasn't trying to remind me of anything anymore. It was simply being rain, and I was simply being here. Lily let out a sleepy sigh, the kind that says, "The world is safe enough for sleep." I rested my foot lightly against her, a silent thank you. There was a time when nights like this frightened me, when quiet felt like abandonment, when rain sounded like echoes I couldn't outrun. But age and living have softened the sharp edges. Now quiet feels earned. Now rain feels familiar. Now memory feels contained, not locked away, just placed gently among other truths. I glanced once more toward the window. The glass reflected lamplight and shadow together. No separation, both allowed. That's what tonight gave me. Permission to remember without reopening, to miss without collapsing, to love without losing myself. If you're listening tonight and the weather has stirred something in you too, something old, something tender, know this. You don't have to solve it. You don't have to relive it. You don't even have to name it. You can sit with it. Let it breathe. And then, when it's ready, set it down beside you. There's room in the night for memory and rest. They don't cancel each other out. I pulled the blanket a little higher and felt the room settle. The lamp hummed quietly. The rain whispered. My breath slowed. Nothing more was required of this day. It had given what it could, and I had received enough. So now, sweetheart, let the weather be just weather. Let memory be just memory. Let yourself be just here. The night knows how to hold the rest. Rest well tonight, sweetheart. Good night. From me, Maggie.